All right, guys, welcome back. This is Interrupting Sports. With me today, I got Jason. Jason, I just connected, guys. So this is going to be a really great conversation. So excited to dive into his experience with sports, kind of his upbringing, how that has shaped that. We're going to talk about a little bit about his professional career. Then we're going to dive more into his experience as a coach and how that shapes and impacts his kids. So you guys should be hyped for this. This one's going to be great. Jason, say hi to everyone.
Hey everyone, Ray, thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here. Appreciate the invitation.
Of course. No, thank you for being here. I'm excited for this one. So let's dive right into. Why don't you introduce yourself, tell everyone why you're here on the podcast and why you're happy to be here.
Well, I'm here to offer maybe some advice and some life lessons. Being long in the tooth, as you can say, being around sports and sports business all my life in many different every different vehicles, a coach, business professional, father coach, volunteer coaching. So those are the aspects of why I'm here, and hopefully I can give some guys and some gals some advice on sort of the Canadian sports business landscape from my perspective, and hopefully on a volunteer and father coach perspective. So Ray, I'm excited to be here, and hopefully I can give some good insights and some key takeaways for your audience.
Amazing. Let's start off with your experience on the sports business side, and then we'll dive more into the coaching side and that impact on your kids there. So why don't you talk about how did you get into sports business? Where did that start?
Well, it all started when I watched the movie Jerry Maguire, to be honest with you. I was pretty inspired. I think a lot of us in my generation that was able to watch that movie, I think we all wanted to be Tom Cruise and an agent and representing athletes. So what happened was I was inspired by that movie, and playing competitive sports at the time. I had this dream to first be a professional tennis player. Now, being a tennis player in Canada at that time was pretty difficult. You know, I played ice hockey as well. Being born in Canada, first generation, everyone played ice hockey. So my love affair with sports started with ice hockey, and people don't know this. Being born and raised in Toronto, I was actually an Edmonton Oilers fan. My parents immigrated from the Philippines in the early 70s, and growing up in the 80s, you watched the Edmonton Oilers and the great teams of Wayne Gretzky, Mark Messier, Yari Curry, and Grant Fuhr winning Stanley Cups. But then I navigated into tennis when actually I saw Michael Chang win a Grand Slam when he was 17 in the French Open. And so my path in sports has always been based on playing sports and competing at a high level. And I decided to pursue this passion, maybe because I couldn't become a professional athlete, just for many different reasons. So I started to learn about, the business of sports and sort of what sort of goes behind the scenes. And at the time, the only degree or the only educational programs, higher educational programs that were on my time in terms of sports management business were in about 3 schools. And the one school I did choose to go to was the University of Windsor. And so I did my undergrad of sports, leisure sports management there, and I graduated there in the year 2000, just to age myself. And then, so to continue my love affair, I did a lot of, the key thing is to do a lot of networking when you're time there. I got some good friends who play varsity sports, and a lot of us graduating from that program, ended up at Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, and that's where we started a career. That's where the Raptors were starting to were in Toronto, and they were starting to make some noise. Other tertiary sports started to crop up in the Toronto GTA area. One of those sports was box lacrosse. The Toronto Rock lacrosse team started to move from the Maple Leaf Spartans to the Air Canada Centre at the time, now Scotiabank Arena. And that's where I got really my career in sports really took off, was from working at the Toronto Rock Lacrosse Club.
Nice. That's awesome. No, I love that extensive experience coming in. It's funny, like you mentioned, yeah, you graduated in 2000. That's the year I was born. So definitely got nice different perspectives on this.
I hope you edit that out because I don't want anyone to know how old I am. But yeah.
Of course. No. So let's continue down this path. So we're talking about you're now into sports business at this stage, and ultimately, how did you kind of find your path in terms of what you wanted to do?
I think the path found me, to be honest. All sports is in my lifeblood, I think, in competing and at a high level at a young age, and being around sports. And my path really was dictated by some key people in the pleasure and honor I'd had to work with. They saw some of the things that I was capable of doing, if not me understanding what my capabilities were in the business aspects. And so I had a couple of great mentors to allow me to grow and just really be challenged. And being at the Toronto Rock Lacrosse Club to start, the ownership group entrusted me in managing some of the business aspects of the sports club, whether in ticketing and marketing. And so I got exposure at a really young age at all facets of the business, whether it be ticketing, sponsorship, marketing, finance, communications, PR, all those things. Being in a small professional team at the time, I was able to put my hands on a lot of different aspects of sports business. And at the time, the ownership group decided to buy a team for the CFL and created the Ottawa Renegades. And I was that third actual employee for that team. So we brought the CFL back to Ottawa in the early 2000s. And they entrusted me again to manage the ticketing department and sales department for that team. So essentially, at a very young age, I was thrust into leadership positions for two professional sports teams at the same time. And as much as, perhaps it was definitely challenging, but it allowed me, again, to touch many facets of the sports business. But I had to learn quickly, I had to fail fast, and I had to recover quickly. And I think that's what allowed me to generate the path to where I am now. And it allowed me to create networks across the entire Canadian and national sports landscape. So I was very lucky in that way. It's not, I'd say, a regular or normal path for young, aspiring sports business professionals, but it was an opportunity that was really thrust into. And you just have to ride the wave and take those experiences, good and bad, and enjoy it. Because it is a passion of mine, and it's not work if you're passionate at something.
Nice. No, I like that a lot. I definitely love hearing that. Not being work, but you have that passion, which is why just, who wouldn't want to enjoy every day of that? So that's great.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So let's talk about your personal identity and how has that impacted your career?
It's a great question, Brett. It's something that I know you and I talked about previously. Being BIPOC of nature and being a visible minority in the sports skating landscape. My personal identity was formulated. I'd have to let me walk this back a little bit. Being able to work in sports is a blessing, but part of it is you have to have leaders and mentors to guide you a little bit. And for me personally, it was hard. It was definitely hard because for somebody of Filipino background in the Canadian sports landscape, there's not a lot of us in the business, right? So establishing a personal identity was very, very challenging to try to fit in per se in professional business. And I'll do a quick anecdote because it's important, and I think it's important for your listeners. Mentorship is very, very important. But representation matters is part of what that means, right? I had no mentors in a sense of people who look like me or talk like me or have a heritage background of me, and that personal identity was challenging for me because I was trying to navigate where do I fit, right? As a professional, nobody really looked like me. No one really understood my heritage. There's no one I could really talk to about certain nuances about my personal identity or things that I'm going through, because essentially they don't look like me. So for me to even try to establish a personal identity, it was very, very challenging, to be honest. And it's still challenging to this day. And I think it affects me because consciously, subconsciously, I know this is happening internally, personally. And the anecdote I wanted to bring up is, one example was I was in a board with about 20 people, and we were discussing, whatever I want to discuss is probably confidential, so I don't want to bring it up. But I was in this boardroom with 20 other sports business professionals, executives, leaders, and nobody looked like me. I didn't know how to react. I walked into that room with a sense of discomfort, high anxiety, what sort of confidence or what sort of, what am I portraying in the room? Do I look? I always question myself that way. And this was many times over when I think about it back in my career when I was younger. At the time, for me, I was just an aspiring person trying to navigate my way. But now that I'm a little older, and this happened recently, it's like you have to take that into perspective, right? Did these people take me seriously? Are they taking me seriously? Who do I talk to gain a little bit of self-belief and confidence, because I can represent myself and my personal identity can shine through. And I think this is what a lot of is happening in the past couple of years. Actually, it's been happening a long time, but more in the forefront, that visible minorities, DEI initiatives and programs are supporting these issues. But for someone like me, who's been in the industry for close to plus 20 years, I'm hoping for my personal identity that I can be that inspiration, that I can be that, representation matters, not just a hashtag, but somebody who's lived it and breathed it and still breathing it today. And getting a sense that personal identity is always part of how you mentor people. And what I mean by that is that representation matters. Somebody's got to look like you. People got to be more purposeful and intentional to look for people who look like you and me, people who are accessible and require assistance to get to certain levels of influence. And this is the challenge that we face right now. There's a lot of, in my history in sports business and in boardrooms and reporting to board of directors, and the first few years of my career, again, nobody looked like me. The leaders of the business didn't look like me, talk like me. And that shaped my personal identity. And it's a purpose now for me to make sure I'm mentoring BIPOC individuals, people who require a little bit more push, and I'm being more intentional with it and I'm being more purposeful with it. And I'm hoping I'm influencing organizations to do the same. I see it now. Hopefully it accelerates faster because we need it. And it's been lacking in our industry for a very long time. I hope that makes sense, but I think it does.
No, yeah, definitely. I see how that could shape everything that you stand for, everything that you're about, and make you want to be purposeful and intentional about your actions today, because you obviously would want to be helping out those who are coming after you and not have them not go through what you had to go through, right? Because if you can make it just a little bit easier for somebody just by extending a helping hand every once in a while, why wouldn't you?
Well, it's not even that, Ray. I think it's more of yes, supporting and helping, but we need to help young folks who are BIPOC build that resilience, build that grit, being able to overcome these challenges and understand that someone has gone through it. That understanding that somebody has, like you said, paved a little bit of the road. There's still bumps that we couldn't obviously pave straight, but they see somebody who's quote unquote made it at some level. And I think that is extremely important. I still go through it today. My personal identity is shaped by, I think, more now, like you said, with more intention and with more purpose, and more consciousness of what's around me. But I think for the most part is that my personal identity is mentorship and is coaching, and I want to do that for the generation coming up. And I'm hoping that I am a person that they can look up to and talk to. And I always make time for those individuals who want to ask questions and who want to gain some of the experience, because I'm still learning too. And I'm hoping that I probably learn more from the people coming up than, the people who've gone before me.
That's amazing. I absolutely just commend you for everything that you do, because I know that, speaking as someone just, coming up, still in school, that means the world to even just one person that shapes them forever. And I'm sure you have those experiences of people who've touched your lives like that. So I'd love to see that you're taking the time to do that as well.
And one of the things that we chatted about too, if you look at it for the most part, I'm a proud Canadian, but I'm proud Filipino heritage as well. And if you look at the Canadian sports landscape, or just in professional sports in general, you could probably name maybe, on one hand, how many professional Filipino athletes are in, the top 4 leagues, or have a level of influence. I mean, the one that comes to mind for a lot of people is probably Manny Pacquiao, right? And we all look to him and sort of what his story resonates to all of us as Filipino Canadians, or Canadian Filipinos, however you want to term it. But in professional sports, in the offices, there's not a lot of us. I'll tell you that much. And if there are, please call me, because I couldn't find you 5-10 years ago. But but if you look at a lot of the professional sports teams across even North America, there's not a lot of us, and we're a small, very small community. And we try to I know I've connected with a couple of girls and guys, and we try to stay connected and have strong conversations about the trials and tribulations of being in an industry where there's not a lot of us in influential positions.
No, that's amazing. And yes, for the listeners, if you are Filipino Canadian, please give Jason a shout. Definitely in the space. Would love to see you guys come together on that part. But yeah, let's talk about, you mentioned many things that I want to dive into. The first thing you talked about was being taken seriously and feeling that you've been taken seriously. So let's talk about your role as a coach now. I want to understand what's the relationship between that idea that you hold so dear of being taken seriously, and how is that reflected in your mentorship?
I think, my coaching started way back when. I think at the time I was working at Tennis Canada, volunteer coaching kids in underserved communities. I never thought I'd be a really good coach, but I actually started to enjoy it that level. And then as I progressed through along, I got married and have some kids, and I have 2 young boys who actually play sports that I never played growing up. So they're heavy into baseball and basketball. And I played basketball growing up, but not at the level of my oldest son plays at. So I wanted to really dive deep in understanding the sports that I wanted to coach, because I wanted to be part of their lives, and I wanted to take it seriously, right? And learn about baseball, learn about basketball a little bit more. And so I volunteer coach, and I've been coaching them for the last 3 to 4 years in baseball, not necessarily basketball, but taken seriously and being intentional about it. Well, that's what it takes, right? For me as a coach, you have, as a volunteer coach for youth sports specifically, and for a traditional sport where not a lot of Canadian Filipinos play, you can look around, none of us play baseball. And so for me to be taken seriously, I would have to take coaching seriously for the sport that I don't really understand. So I had to study, I had to do my homework, I had to take classes. And for me to take it seriously, it comes with credentials, right? And you have to have the credentials, and you have to showcase your knowledge about the sport to be taken seriously, right? In an arena where representation lacks, for diverse visible minority coaches in a sport like baseball. There are a lot of diverse coaches. There's a lot of visible minority coaches, but for Filipino coaches, not a lot, especially in the associations that I'm coaching in now. And it's important for me to be taken seriously, because my sons play the sport, and I want to show my sons as a role model, not just as a father, but as a coach, that it is possible that people can have influence, people can be taken seriously, and they look like us, and they talk like us, and people will turn to us for knowledge and for advice and for coaching. So for me to be taken seriously, for anyone to be taken seriously, I mean, the advice that I would give is obviously do your homework, research whatever sport you want to coach, or research the heck out of it and gain the knowledge, gain the history, be in the news of the updates and of what's happening in professional and minor league sports for that specific sport like baseball. Because I had no clue. I wasn't a fan. I was a fan of the Blue Jays. I was around when they won the last back-to-back World Series, but I wasn't, in baseball like I am now. And for me to take it seriously as a coach, and for any visible minority or for any BIPOC individual or even women who are looking to coach at a high level, first you have to show credentials. You have to have your knowledge, and you have to do your homework. And for me to showcase that to my sons on the field, where I can create plays and command respect, and because I have the knowledge, that is worth a lot. And that's what it takes to be taken seriously. And I'm very intentional about it. I'm very personal about it. I go about every practice and every play with a fine-tooth comb. I have practice plans. I have agendas for my other coaches. And my kids see that. My players see that. And that's how you get taken seriously. And that's how you drive the respect that you ultimately do reserve. And at the end, you got to have some self-belief, right? Like, again, like I said in the beginning of the conversation, you're not perfect. You got to fail fast, but you got to recover quickly. So those are the things that, I have to be cognizant about every time I'm coaching out there. And it comes with your tone of voice. It comes with how you prepare. It comes with your body language, your command on the field, the respect for your players, and the communication with the parents. Like, those are all the things you always have to do your homework on to be taken seriously at a position. Because, as you know, and maybe you have experienced it too, Ray, I've experienced it as well. I don't think the quote unquote, for a lack of a better term, the leash for coaches who look like you and me, or coaches who look at me, is very, very short. Right. I truly believe that. And it happens in professional sports, it's consciously or subconsciously. It's that whole, I want to say this correctly, but it's one of those, maybe those subconscious things where he may not know what he's doing because of X, like those little underlying things that, have propped up, have been coming up in not in just in coaching, but in the professional world. Or she may not be able to understand that because of X, right? Like, it's out there. It's still out there. And, we have to make sure that, we do the homework so we are taken seriously.
I completely agree. Honestly, everything you're saying, I'm just nodding my head as you're going along, because it's really checking the boxes. I think when you're, for your boys and everybody else whose lives you're impacting as a coach, you're a teacher, you're a role model, right? And it goes to say, like, you showing up to coach is them showing up to play. And I talk a lot about on this show of how the values that you learn through sport are reflected as well off the court and off the field. And I think hopefully that your boys are seeing that too. I'm sure you've had your moments when you realize that, hey, like, I'm doing the right thing here. And those moments that just kind of click and make it all worth it, because that's what's needed to be done, right? Seeing role models, as you mentioned, representation mattering, having sort of gaining that internal motivation that might not be there for people, has to come from an external force, right?
I agree. And you said you made a great point, for anyone listening out there, who's looking to coach, and look like me and you. We have to, take the extra necessary steps to show our credentials to be taken seriously. Fault or no fault. I think everyone tries to, think that, we have, it's the victim mentality. We want to get rid of that. We have to get rid of victim mentality, right? We need to show up and be prepared and have that self-belief, even if we don't have it internally. Like, you have to play that game, and we have to do things in a way that's effective, not necessarily right. And I say that in belief in everything I do. I want to be effective, not necessarily right at all the time. You want to be effective because you want to change things. You want to offer solutions, and you want to offer, advice, and being a role model. We wear so many different hats at many different times of our lives and our daily lives. And for me specifically, when I'm out on the field, it's so important that I'm very aware of what's happening, the way I'm speaking, the way I'm talking, the way I'm coaching, because the microscope is on me at all times. It's there. I know it's there, but I want to show my boys, like, I want to show not just the boys, but everyone else who's out there. I want to show them that, there is a possibility. There is the possibility to have a position of influence, even if it's just a minor league baseball coach, because you're affecting, youth athletes. You're affecting people's lives, right? And if you're not prepared, if you don't take it seriously, and if you're not taken seriously, my boys will see that. Kids aren't dumb. They feel and see what's happening. And for us, specifically for me as a coach to my boys, I want them to understand those values and take those values with them on and off the field. Because it's not going to be easy for all of us, right? The world has changed, but like you said in the beginning, if one person can represent what matters the most to some individuals, if I can be that person for my boys and for anybody else, then I'm more than happy to do that. And I'm going to be aware I'm doing that and going to be intentional of doing it.
That's amazing. I have so much respect for that. What is kind of just to wrap this up, what's your message for youth coming on? We have a bunch of kids that also listen to the show, aspiring athletes, those just passionate about the industry. What do you have to say to them coming up?
Like I said before, it's, don't be afraid to fail fast, but recover quickly, right? And understand they're going to be barriers. They're still here. I don't know if they're going to ever go away. To be honest, I'm hopeful. I'm trying to lead crack those barriers down with some people in the industry right now. Seek mentorship. Don't be afraid to call for help. There are a lot more people now that are willing to help. I'll be honest, growing through the industry, there wasn't a lot of people offering for help. There's a small minority of us trying to help each other, but now that has grown exponentially. So don't be afraid to help out. There's a lot of people wholeheartedly will help you. And it's all about, being right all the time, right? Like what I mean by that is if you see something wrong, it's okay to speak out. And don't think that if you do speak out at something that you don't feel is right, that it's going to hinder your progress. It won't. It will actually accelerate your progress. And I think a lot of young people are afraid because they feel that there will be another barrier built if they speak out at something they feel that's not right. But I'll tell you, it's going to accelerate things. And the more people that have the courage to do that, the more people who are aware of things, the more people who are pointing things out, it's just going to make for a better place, because that's going to allow us all to grow together. And it might be small, but those small things matter, and those small things will generate to big things. So for the young people out there growing up, coming up, again, don't be afraid to ask for help. Have the courage to do things that are right, even if you feel that it's going to hinder your progress. It's going to accelerate your progress. Okay. So those are the two things I'd really want everyone to focus on. And, in the end of the day, have fun with it. Find something that you're passionate about, because if you're not having fun with it, then, you can make decisions on doing something else. But, we're all on an individual journey to find certain levels of happiness. But at the same time, it's like, we need to do this together. So we have to have the courage, and we have to have the courage to ask for help. And I think those are the things I'd really like to exemplify, because to be honest, when I was first in the game and first doing it, I didn't have the courage, and I didn't ask for help. I tried to do things on my own. But hopefully that my resilience and where I am now will help everyone coming up, and don't be afraid to ask for help.
Amazing. I love that message. Taking away for me, my theme with that one word is resiliency, everything being encompassed in your message. But I absolutely love that takeaway. I know a bunch of listeners are going to be nodding their heads and probably super inspired now, Jason, to looking into getting into coaching. Thank you for that. And thank you for sharing your story. And thank you for your impact that you have on the industry, and for teachings, and for mentorship, and for all that you do for your family and the community. We see it. We hope more see it. And we hope more people become their best versions of themselves so that they can continue to give back as you do.
No, and I appreciate it, Ray. And like I said, I'll probably learn more from you guys coming up. So, feel free to send a message, hit me up. I'm always available. I will always try to make time for anybody who wants to learn more, and we can learn together.
Amazing. Well, thank you for coming on the show, guys. That wraps up this episode. episode 6 again already with Interrupting Sports. So hit us up on Instagram, all of our socials, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. You know where to find this, and share it with your friends. Let's get this episode rolling. Have a great one, guys.
Thanks, everyone.